Scorpio, pause for a second because the fact that you clicked this video at all is already part of the message. Not everyone feels the hush before a breakthrough. Not everyone notices when the air changes. Butudo. And right now, something is shifting in your world in a way that doesn't need noise to be real. This week carries a different kind of weight. The kind that doesn't announce itself with fireworks, but with a quiet sentence, an unexpected email. A gentle opening where there used to be a wall. A financial breakthrough is near, not as a lottery fantasy. Not as a loud promise meant to bait your hope, but as a spiritual correction, a rebalancing, a return. Scorpio, God is balancing the scales this week, and you can feel it in your bones, because you've lived too long in a season where the scales felt unfair. There's a reason the strongest Scorpios don't beg the universe. T'es lisse. T'es watch. T'es endure. You've carried pressure in silence that other people would have turned into a public performance. You've taken hits that no one saw, and somehow still held your integrity like a candle that refused to go out. That's why this message isn't just about money. It's about justice. It's about divine accounting, the kind that tracks what people ignore. Your restraint. Your patience. The times you didn't retaliate. The moments you chose peace, even when it cost you pride. This week isn't simply good luck. It's the universe remembering your receipts. If you've been feeling oddly pulled inward lately, wanting fewer conversations, fewer explanations, fewer people in your space, don't call that loneliness. Call it protection. When something sacred is forming, your spirit naturally reduces the noise. A seed doesn't grow in the spotlight. A miracle doesn't always arrive with an audience. Sometimes it arrives as a private opening, a quiet clearance, a door that swings wide with no applause. Scorpio, your silence is not your weakness. It's your sanctuary. It's where God can place something in your hands without interference. Without envy, without the distortions that come from people who don't understand what it took for you to get here. This week, the scales begin to tilt. Not because you forced them. Not because you proved yourself to the world. But because you've reached the point where you can receive without collapsing into guilt. Without rushing to justify it. Without sabotaging it the moment it arrives. That's a level. That's spiritual adulthood. And if you've ever noticed how some people get blessings and immediately leak them through chaotic decisions, emotional spending, or loud oversharing, this is where you're different. You've been trained by pressure. You've been refined by delay. And now you're being trusted with what you once prayed for. Let's talk about how this kind of breakthrough actually starts. Because it rarely begins with a suitcase of cash falling out of the sky like a movie scene. It begins with alignment. It begins with your energy stabilizing enough to hold more. It begins with one conversation that changes how you see your worth. One realization that makes you stop negotiating with your own potential. One moment where you choose not to chase because you can finally feel what's meant for you moving toward you. This is why the shift feels quiet. Quiet doesn't mean small. Quiet means precise. You might notice signs that feel almost too ordinary to be spiritual. A delayed payment suddenly clears. A refund appears. A client returns. A job opportunity reopens. A debt solution emerges. A person who once overlooked you suddenly takes you seriously. Scorpio, this is how divine justice moves, subtle at first, then undeniable. The point isn't the form. The point is the pattern. The energy that was blocked begins to flow. The pressure that was stuck begins to release. The scale that was heavy on one side begins to balance. And with Scorpios, the money story is rarely just money. It's security. Itegates afeti. It's the ability to exhale. It's the moment your nervous system realizes it doesn't have to brace for impact every day. If you've lived in survival mode long enough, receiving can feel suspicious. You may even catch yourself thinking, what's the catch? Or how long will this last? That doesn't mean the blessing isn't real. It means your body is learning a new language, the language of stability. And that language takes practice. It takes gentleness. It takes repetition. It takes you choosing to believe that good things can arrive without punishment attached. Now listen closely, Scorpio, because the scales don't balance by accident. They balance because you've changed. Somewhere along the way, you stopped being the person who tolerated crumbs. You stopped being the person who kept pouring into people who didn't pour back. You stopped being the person who apologized for needing more. Even if you didn't say it out loud, your spirit said it. Enough. And heaven responds to that kind of clarity. Not the clarity that screams, but the clarity that stands. This week carries a justice frequency. No revanche. No drame. Not a public downfall of your enemies like some cheap fantasy. Real justice is quieter than that. Real justice is restoration. Real justice is the return of what you lost because you were too kind, too loyal, too patient. Real justice is when God doesn't just remove what hurt you, He replaces what was missing. And sometimes the replacement comes through money, because money is simply energy in a form the world recognizes. Money is mobility. Money is options. Money is the ability to choose a healthier environment, a safer home, a calmer life. So, when the universe moves money toward you, it's not always about luxury. Sometimes, it's about liberation. You may be entering a window where your work finally becomes visible. The thing you did in the dark, learning, refining, practicing, healing, starts to pay you back. That's not random. That's harvest. Scorpios don't build on shallow ground. You build from the deep. And when deep work finally meets open doors, the results look sudden to other people. But you know the truth. You know how long it took. You know how many times you kept going when no one was clapping. So, here's what I want you to do this week. Move like someone who respects what's forming. Protect it early. Don't announce it too soon. Don't argue with people who don't understand it. Don't hand your plans to someone who has a history of misunderstanding your heart. Scorpio, not everyone deserves access to your becoming. The blessing is not fragile, but the early stage is sensitive like wet cement that needs time to set. Speak to God about it before you speak to the world about it. Pray over it before you post about it. Let it settle into reality before you invite other people's opinions into it. If you're seeing repeating numbers, pay attention, not because numbers are magic, but because your mind and spirit use symbols to wake you up. If you keep seeing 444, think foundation, structure, system, stability. Tiwiki isn't about receiving, it's about counting enough to keep what you receive. That might mean creating a separate savings account. It might mean paying off one debt that's been haunting you. It might mean setting a boundary with someone who drains you financially. It might mean saying no to impulse spending that's really just emotional, soothing disguised as treating yourself. You can treat yourself without betraying your future. That's mastery. If you keep seeing 888, think flow. Retourne. Circulation. 888 is the energy of what you gave comes back, but it also carries a lesson. Wealth that stays requires wisdom. Scorpios often carry an all-or-nothing pattern, either intense scarcity thinking or intense spending as a rebellion against scarcity. This week invites you to a third path: stewardship. Calm decisions. Clear choices. Quiet confidence. Wealth that doesn't need to prove itself. And yes, Scorpio, the scales balancing can also look like a conversation you didn't expect. A person reaching out. A mediator showing up. An apologie. A resolution. A legal or paperwork situation clearing. A burden lifting. Justice doesn't always show up as more money. Sometimes it shows up as less bleeding. Less leakage. Less loss. Less go. And that, too, is a miracle, because the first step to prosperity is not earning more, it's stopping the drain. There's another layer here, and it's the one Scorpios secretly understand best: spiritual authority. When you've survived what you've survived, you gain a kind of power that can't be faked. You can feel people's intentions. You can sense energy shifts before they happen. You can read the room like a prophecy. That's not paranoia, that's perception. This week, trust your discernment. If something feels rushed, it might not be aligned. If something feels calm, even if it's unfamiliar, it might be the door. The right opportunities don't usually feel like panic. They feel like clarity. So, if you receive an offer, an invitation, a proposal, a chance to collaborate, pause. Briat. Give it a little space. A blessing doesn't need pressure to be real. A blessing can wait for your yes. Let your body speak. Notice your chest. Notice your stomach. Notice whether you feel open or tight. Your intuition isn't just a mystical idea, it's your nervous system translating truth. Now let's bring God into this, in the simplest way: the God who sees. The God who remembers. The God who counts what humans dismiss. You may have been overlooked by people, but you were not overlooked by heaven. You may have been underestimated, but you were not unseen. And if your spirit has been weary, if your heart has been asking, when is it my turn? There's a soft answer in the air this week: soon. Not a brittle promise. Not a manipulative guarantee. A gentle turning. Like winter shifting towards spring without needing permission. This week asks you to receive without shame. Some Scorpios struggle here. You're strong. You're capable. You're used to being the one who holds it together. So, receiving can feel like vulnerability. But receiving is not weakness. Receiving is alignment. Receiving is humility. Receiving is allowing God to love you in a form you can finally recognize. And Scorpio, I need to say something that might sting a little. But, in a clean way, sometimes the reason the scales stayed unbalanced is because you kept volunteering to carry more than your share. You kept trying to be the strong one. You kept taking responsibility for what wasn't yours. You kept making excuses for people who didn't deserve them. Scale booty week, this doing that. You stop dragging dead weight. You stop funding chaos with your energy. You stop calling it loyalty when it's really self-abandonment. When you do that, money responds. Opportunity responds. Peace responds. Because you become a safe place for blessings to land. You become stable enough to keep what arrives. That's what heaven looks for, not perfection, but readiness. So, here's a simple ritual you can do without making it weird before sleep. Place your hand on your chest and whisper something like, God, I receive what is for me. I release what is not. Balance the scales in my life. Ta torcite. No performance. No fear. Just a clear request. Then in the morning, make one practical move that matches the prayer. 1. Send un email. Organize your finances. Apply for the opportunity. Update the resume. Publish the content. Mexocal. A breakthrough is spiritual, yes, but it often arrives through practical doors. And when the money begins to move, however, it move wisely. Don't rush to tell everyone. Don't rush to spend it to prove you're finally okay. Don't rush to rescue people who didn't rescue you. Let the blessing breathe. Let it settle. Let it become stable. Let it become a foundation, not a flare. If this message is touching you, comment something that anchors it without turning it into clickbait. Try this. I allow balance. I receive with peace. Or simply, God is restoring me. Keep it simple. Keep it réel. Your words are not magic spells, but they are direction. They tell your mind where to look. They tell your heart what to expect. They tell your spirit what you're agreeing with. And Scorpio, because I respect you, I'm going to give you a gentle truth near the end. Like a lantern rather than a warning, take this message the way you'd take rainwater in your hands. Drink what nourishes you. Keep what feels true. Release what doesn't fit your path. This is a story woven from symbols, faith, and possibility, and invitation to your inner strength, not a contract promising a specific outcome on a specific clock. Let it be a mirror, not a mandate. Let it be a soft map, not a cage. And if you are carrying heavy financial stress, keep honoring both spirit and responsibility to seek wise counsel. Make grounded choices, and remember that miracles often arrive through ordinary steps guided by extraordinary grace. Now breathe again, Scorpio. Feel the quiet strength in you. The part that has survived before and will thrive now. This week is not asking you to become someone else. It's asking you to finally live as who you already are, discerning, resilient, sacred, and ready. The scales are moving. God is balancing what felt unfair. The breakthrough is near. Not as a loud fantasy, but as a realignment that makes your life feel lighter, cleaner, steadier. And when it starts, when the first sign appears, the first door opens, the first relief lands, don't panic. Don't question it to death. Don't shrink. Juste recève. Quietly. Wisely. Gratefully. Because you didn't come this far to stay in the same story. You came this far to be restored.